I already owned the music. I already knew the album. I already knew exactly why it mattered. But I still wanted a copy that connected me to the moment Van Halen first arrived. And eventually I found it. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Dave's Side 1. I'm Dave, your host, who knows that sometimes the version of a record becomes part of its story over here at Art of Listening Records, where every record has a story and every story starts on Side 1. Today I'm talking about Van Halen's debut and what it felt like to finally find an early pressing I wanted to keep. Van Halen's first album is not difficult to hear. The music has never disappeared. There have been reissues, there have been other formats, there are plenty of ways to experience the songs. So this search was not about gaining access to the album, it was about finding a physical copy that felt connected to 1978. A record that represented the album not only as music, but as an object from the period when that music was still new. So as we do, let's take a quick walk down Dave's memory lane. There are albums that announce themselves from the opening seconds. Van Halen's debut was one of those records. Runnin' with the Devil establishes the attitude, then Eruption changes the conversation. And before the listener has much time to recover, the band moves into You Really Got Me. That sequence alone tells you this is not a band slowly introducing itself. Van Halen arrived sounding confident, energetic, and completely formed. The entire first side moves with that same sense of purpose. The original album's first side runs from Running with the Devil through I'm the One. Side 2 begins with Jamie's Crying and ends with On Fire. This was not an album I needed to be convinced to own. The question was which copy I wanted. The phrase first pressing gets used very casually. Sometimes a seller sees an old label and assumes the record must be a first. Sometimes an early reissue gets described as an original. Sometimes two records look nearly identical until you examine the details. That's why the label matters. The catalog number matters, the jacket details matter, and the information etched or stamped into the runout matters. A collector should never identify a pressing from the cover alone. When I found this copy, I didn't begin with the assumption that it was what I wanted. I began by checking the catalog number, the Warner Brothers label, the runout, the jacket, the vinyl, and just as importantly, the condition. An early pressing is still a record meant to be played. Age alone does not make a damaged copy the right copy. I wanted one that carried some of the album's history, but could still deliver the experience that made the album important in the first place. Once the details lined up, the decision became easy. This was not simply another Van Halen record. It was the edition I'd hoped to find. The cover had survived, the record had survived, and the music inside still carried all of that original energy. When the needle dropped, I was not pretending it was 1978. I was listening now. But I was holding a record connected to the year the album entered the world, and that connection made the first spin feel different. It's easy for record collecting to become a competition. Who owns the earliest copy? Who has the rarest label? Who paid the least? Who has the cleanest jacket? Those details can be interesting. They can teach us how records were manufactured and distributed. But the pressing should deepen the story, not replace it. I wanted this copy because I already loved the album. I didn't love the album merely because I found this copy. So for tonight's Side 1 spin, what album made you search for a specific pressing or edition? Maybe you wanted an original. Maybe you wanted a particular mastering. Maybe you wanted the version you remembered from childhood, or maybe you were searching for a cover, label, or track sequence that later changed. Tell me the record, the edition, and why that version mattered to you. Well, that's it for today's Side 1. Thanks for spending a little time with me once again, and please keep that needle in the groove, and we will talk to you tomorrow.